This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to WFPro Live number 5. I am your host, Narayan, and I am really looking forward to today's session. I've got a pretty loaded agenda with a lot of really exciting topics to talk about. So we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who are just joining for the first time or seeing this for the first time, there are previous sessions that have been recorded already, and they're on the WFPro YouTube channel. So be sure to go back and watch some of those videos if you haven't. There are a lot of really useful tips and tricks for users of all different levels of Workfront, full of great information. So be sure to check those out, and also be sure to look up WFPro on Twitter and follow me. So let's go ahead and jump into WFPro Home and just do a quick update on Home. I'd like to make sure that every week I do give you the latest in the development that's going on here on Home, just so you're kind of aware, and so maybe if you're interested in grabbing some of the latest code here for Home, you can do so for those of you who have already installed it. Now, one of the biggest enhancements to Home that I'm going to point out here early on is the fact that Home is now starting to have a brand sort of look and feel. And so I started putting together a logo using HTML because although I know how to use Illustrator and Photoshop, to me, again, if I can stay within Workfront and manage and maintain everything that I'm doing within Workfront, including the development of things like logos and branding and identity, then I'm just setting a precedent there that I don't have to leave Workfront to do my work. And so that's pretty nice. For the most part, I'm eliminating those tools outside of Workfront that I don't necessarily need. So one of them is Photoshop. I'm finding more and more I don't need Photoshop to do things like this. So just with some styling, I've got a logo, but one of the more, I think, exciting things for me is the fact that there's now a navigation menu here under the logo. And this is really just some HTML where we're rendering some links. And those links are clickable. And when you click them, they're set to open in the same window instead of in a new window, which is nice because this really is shaping up to be very much like your traditional website that you navigate using your primary navigation, such as the WFPro.com site. This kind of navigation is what I was shooting for. And I'll leave this open because we're going to need that in a few minutes anyway. But that's what I was shooting for here. And so I've identified these 7 top level links that I think, or that I'm actually certain are the most commonly used links in my Workfront experience. And so if I can get to any of these things pretty quickly, then I'm pretty sure I can get to the things that matter to me as a user or as an administrator of Workfront. So we can click into each one of these, and then I'll click into some of them later, but they will take you to the dashboard that they're hyperlinked to. And so I'll just go ahead and click one so you see how that works. It opens a dashboard. It loads the dashboard that I've asked it to load. It doesn't open a new window. It doesn't leave in a new tab or anything like that. There's no pop-up. It just takes me there. So again, I can just click back to Home, and there we are. So that's some fun stuff. And I'm also adding some more kind of controls in here for each one of these that we load, so we can get to configuration and behind the scenes settings and wiki documentation. And we have the ability to submit support, request issues or log issues for this package, things like that. So that's the Home update. Now I'd like to briefly check in on the scoop. So we're gonna, well, I've got to expand all my reports here. I've collapsed everything, so it's all kind of hidden, but there's the scoop. go ahead and check in on that and see what kind of communication we've got going on in Warp. And oh, look, we've got stuff even here very recently. We've got some activity going on. In the last hour, the last couple of hours, last 4 hours, as expected, a lot of it is around WFPro Live 5. But if we come over here and start looking at 7 days, there's some new activity on a new package here that seems to be taking over. So Unlimited is definitely a hot topic. And then, of course, the no values are all user communications on user profiles. So that's what's going on there. So that's our check-in on the scoop. Let me go ahead and run it for all time, just because it's always a fun one to run. See who the winner is in terms of communication. And it looks to me like Warp has the most communication still, followed shortly by the cleanup dashboard. So that one got a lot of activity, and maybe we'll need to revisit that one soon and make sure that everyone in the community understands what we did there with that Workfront cleanup dashboard. So I'll maybe take note of that and I'll make sure I come back to that.
Hey, Narayan.
Yes, go ahead, Doug.
Can you just refresh that again, please? I just raised an issue a moment ago, and I put a comment on a document, and I wondered whether it comes through. Okay. Yeah, WFPro Home, that bottom one at the top. I just literally created that because if you want to click through it just for a sec.
Oh, great.
And open that project, and then hop to the issues. You can see.
Oh, too small. yeah, I had a feeling it might render strangely in some different browsers. I'm just in Chrome.
Yeah. So that just as a real live, literally, this is what makes WFPro live, like Saturday night, but not quite as funny. So that illustrates that the scoop is also picking up document level comments. So that's what I was kind of testing along the way, to just letting you know that you might want to adjust your graphics a little bit there. So just so people are aware, it filters all the way up into the scoop too. And I wasn't sure. So thanks for checking.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for doing that, Doug. That actually was a great illustration of how we can use Workfront to capture the fact that there's an issue, upload the document, and then what you'll see here I'm doing is taking that issue that Doug was nice enough to log for me, which I really appreciate. I'm going to go ahead and assign that to the WFPro team, and we'll just leave that assignment there on that issue for one of the topics that we're going to talk about a little bit later on the subject of requests and work management. So that's actually a really exciting subject, and is one that I'm pretty familiar with. So I'll look forward to that. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is our text mode exercise of the day on collections. So I've got, let's see here, about 7 minutes to cover this. So see what I can get through and kind of give you some of the backstory first. So what collections allow you to do in Workfront is if you have an object such as a task in Workfront, and that task, if it has maybe issues on it, and you are running a task report in Workfront, and you would like to see those issues that reside within that task, then what you need to do is use what's called a collection to reach into that task and pull those issues that exist and render them in the view. And so in our live text mode exercise that we've been working on week over week, I've gone ahead and preloaded this task that we had shown last time with an issue. And I'll show you that here briefly. So let me go ahead and open this task up and jump. It's already on issues here. So you can see I've loaded an issue to this task called run as system user. And back in the report, you can see here in this column, it says issues on tasks. It really should say task, but so right now you're seeing the one that's already there. And so if I come in here and add a second issue, theoretically, when we come back and reload our report, we'll have the second issue. And so what I'd like to do is show you how we arrive at this. And it's easy if you know how to get there, but it's very challenging if you're trying to figure this out for the first time, or if you're even adminning for a while or writing reports for a while, and it's just still not all that easy to overcome. So I'm going to show you how I like to do it. And of course, I'm going to do what I like to do is duplicate my report. And in one window, I have the editor, and in the second window, I have the view. So I can go ahead and run it. All right. So the first thing I'm going to suggest you do is go to wf-pro.com, and under the how-to drop menu, there is a link here to add a collection to a view. And this documentation, while somewhat dated and maybe in need of a bit of a refresher, will get you far enough along in building a collection. But this video today is, I think, really going to do you much better. But it has the links that you need. And the first one I'm going to point out is the API Explorer. So we'll go ahead and open that API Explorer in a new tab. And the first thing I'm going to do is search for the object that I'm building this collection view on top of. So we know it's a task report that we're working on. And so I want to look up the task object. And the first thing I'm going to point out here is, and this is true of pretty much any object that you're going to build a report on. If you look it up in the API Explorer, like a task or a project or an issue, and you want to know what you can report on from a collection perspective, the collections tab right here is what will tell you. And when you look at this collections tab, you're going to see far fewer choices here, or fields rather, than you will over here, because Workfront can't allow you to reach in and reference anything. There are just certain objects. And so the one that I had showed you as an example is the issue object. And so if I click on issues, there's a field name here. And this field name is important. We're going to come back and look at that in a minute. But once you know what you've identified what it is you would like to report on from a collection perspective, we're going to go back to the instructions here, and we're going to copy this text from the example here and come back to our report and paste it. I'll just do a new column next to the one that I already have in place and explain each of these. So we know the display name is just the name of the column header, such as issues on tasks. So we'll just call this one issues. The list delimiter can vary, and there are different ones that you can choose from, and they behave differently. If you go back to the site, I've listed out a few of them that you can use here. Had to do a screenshot, but that's how you would type them. So I'm using the div. It's my favorite one. It puts a nice line break in between issues, and it's pretty clean. Now, in here where it says object, you're going to want to go back to the API Explorer. Remember, I said you're going to need to know that field name. Well, that's what you want to copy is that op tasks piece right there. And when you come back to here, just replace object with that. And now the last thing we need to do is we need to say, well, of the tasks that we're going to render and pull back, what are the what's the data that we want to pull back? Because tasks have a lot of data. They have names, they have entered by, they have reference numbers. What do you want to know? In this case, I'm going to go ahead and click this link right here, which takes me to the issue object. And the thing that I want to pull back is the issue name. So I'm going to come down here and find it. And whatever is in this field name right here, I'm going to copy it, go back to my report and paste it in between those curly brackets, because this is a value expression, and save. And with that, if we apply our change and refresh, we should have the same thing that we have on the left, and we do. So this is pretty powerful, and can give you some really valuable reporting. There are a ton of ideas and ways that you can create real value in your reports using this. But there are also ways that you can style the presentation of the information, such as you can put an ampersand BULL. That's a bullet, I think. And if you do an HTML bullet character and refresh it, you can start to drop some HTML in there. So you see that's what it did, is put a bullet in front of the issue name. So you can do some styling, and that's just, I think, valuable to know. But you can also in this value expression get creative in writing some functions here. So you could write a function and it says something like if name equals test, then render the name. So if we were to do this, the issue would only be rendered if the name equaled test for that issue. So in this case, if I apply it, it will not render because it's not named test. Neither one of them are, in fact. So they're gone. So that's, I think, concludes collections, our text mode exercise on collections for the day. Now, if you are interested in seeing this, of course, you can always go to that public report that I publish after these meetings, where you can go load this text mode exercise up. And of course, I'll also put the text mode for this in the libraries. In fact, there's plenty of that, and that's the last thing I'll say about collections. Is at the bottom of this list, or actually at the top, there's a text mode and views using collections link. And right now, this is, I think, the most comprehensive example list that I have of examples where collections are used. And these examples are on a variety of different objects. So definitely go check out that report and look at the web page here, and use the examples and modify them to fit your needs. Okay, so before I move on, let me just pause and ask, are there any questions from anybody who is on the call around use of collections? Okay. No questions? Well, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and we'll chat. All right, so let's move on to our next agenda item, which is community concerns. And today, I am really proud to be able to welcome my guest speaker, Karlton Harrison. He's a colleague and a friend of mine. We've been working together for quite a few years now, and he is a master of quite a few trades when it comes to Workfront. And he's really a good go-to guy for my Kickstarts. And so I've asked Karlton to come and join and do a presentation on kickstarting data into Workfront, because I can't emphasize how important it is to be prepared for that inevitable question that's going to come up when you solve a problem for somebody in Workfront that was otherwise being managed outside of Workfront in some other system. That question is going to come up. When can I, or how can I get my data into Workfront so that we can continue working on the things we already have? And so Karlton's going to talk us through how he goes about doing that, and how we can use Excel spreadsheets to load our data. So Karlton, go ahead and take it away, and I'll share my screen as you instruct me to.
All right, perfect. So again, thank you for having me, Narayan. I really appreciate you giving me this time to just sort of dive a little bit into Kickstarts in general. The greatest benefit for Kickstarts, in my experience, has been able to really load a file rather quickly. versus going through the API Explorer route, having a coder in mind, a developer to actually put that code in place and sort of set those ETL processes. With a Excel Kickstart, you can pretty much just grab all your information, flat file, load it in the Workfront, and then you're good to go. So to start with, before you begin importing any data in the Workfront, the first thing that you want to do, and Narayan, if you want to go to Setup and just go to down to the system data, and this is where you can export any existing data that you have in the system, and you can use what Workfront has provided, which is essentially a blank template, or you can actually export existing data as well. That way you know what values are actually there and used, and how they're used and how they're defined. So if you scroll down to, so you can download a blank Kickstart sheet. And if you click more options, there's, as you can see, there's a variety. So issue, project, task, those are typically the primary data objects that are used. But you do have a various slew of options to go through. So for this example, I'm just going to use the very basic project task import. So Narayan, if you want to pull up that file for me. And this file is just, now you can include as many projects, as many tasks. I believe the limit that I last checked was, it was 5,000 records that can be loaded at one particular time. So you can include multiple projects, and you can also associate multiple tasks with various projects. So Narayan, if you go to, so if we look at this first sheet here, I have 3 projects listed. Pretty standard name, completion date, start date. Some other important fields to note outside of planned completion date and planned start date are owner ID. So for example, you can set the actual person that is actually taking ownership of the project versus, you know, the person that actually kickstarts it. And then also there's, there you go, set owner. And then also the sponsor as well. You can set the actual sponsor. So typically this is the person that put in a request, and they're the person that needs to be kept abreast of how the status is going. You can set that person there as well. So moving on to the second the task sheet. This is how you can associate. So we're going to start from column 1. So is new is pretty common. It's pretty much true and false. It's Boolean value. So true says, hey, I want to load this information. False says, no, I don't want to load this information. And then the ID, the ID is the important piece. This sets, typically it's a numerical order, 1 to 100, 1 to 10. That's the actual task ID, but then also you have the project ID, and this what correlates the task to the project. So as you can see, the first task is going to project 1. The next 2 tasks, ID 2 and 3, are going to project 2, and then the next 3 tasks, 4, 5, 6, are going to project 3. So this is how you create that relationship to where when you load that information, it's connected together. So Narayan, you can go ahead and load that information.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do it and try it for the first time. So, and when all said and done, I'm expecting to have projects 1, 2, and 3. So we'll go ahead and while I do this, I wanted to point out one thing. You may have noticed I had to shift over to a different browser, in this case, Safari. And that's because I had to log in as an admin, because I do not operate in this environment as an admin day to day. And so, and that's, I think, a best practice that I wish somebody would have told me early on, but I couldn't emphasize more to you all now. If you're not doing that now, try to think about how you can get to that place where you can do your day-to-day job as being a regular user, planner, not an admin. But let's go ahead and upload this file. We're running a little behind schedule. Get it going. So,
all right, perfect. So while this is loading, I just wanted to highlight some best practices. First one is when you're going through the Kickstart process and you're loading projects and tasks, it's best to create a template. This eliminates the need for essentially for the task import piece. So you can load the project, you can attach a template ID to it, and then your list, your workflow is already preset and it's loaded. Second thing, custom forms. This is really where you capture that pertinent information in regards to what this particular project is about. So that's important to have, and that can be done at issue, project, task, or document. And then also just from an organization perspective. So as Narayan flips to where these projects land, it'll be important to create portfolios and also projects. This keeps your projects organized, and you absolutely always know exactly where they are, what they relate to, and actually who the key stakeholders are in regards to your projects.
okay. And so they were called Project 1, Project 2, and Project 3?
Yes.
Okay. My project search didn't work. And rather than cheating, I'm going to see if they're in here. So I'm not seeing them. And what that tells me, guys, is I kickstarted them as an admin, but guess what I didn't do? I didn't share them with anybody. So brilliant. The security works the way it should have. So I'm going to go in and find those projects here from a view where we can see them. So there they are. Okay. And perfect. So and what I'm expecting here is that these projects will have those tasks in them, but you'll notice I can't get to them because the way I've built the view here, there's no custom form attached, and without our standard custom form attached, we don't have some necessary links. So what Karlton was describing is as a best practice when you're kickstarting data and you're loading projects, if there's a custom form that you need to attach, doing that during the kickstart will resolve problems like this, where if this had been identified in the kickstart as being the set category ID, then that form would have been attached. So now that I've done that, we can jump into any one of these projects and verify that the tasks are there that Karlton had in the file, and there they are. Great.
So yes,
Karlton,
again,
was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was all. I really wanted to point out just the simplicity of doing so, but then also I have various, other examples as far as, kickstarting custom forms with various fields, multitask fields, drop downs, radio buttons, that sort of thing. So you can get very sophisticated and advanced, and you can do this on a continuous basis as well. You can do it every week, every month. It flows really nicely once you get the hang of it.
Right, and for those people who are really comfortable in Excel, there's even a little trick that maybe we can do a presentation on at a later date where we've used Excel to run and execute some VB script to actually push data from Excel directly into Workfront.
Yes.
So that's also maybe one that we can kick up a presentation for later. And yeah, so thank you so much, Karlton. I appreciate you coming on and talking. And I'm going to go ahead and move on with the agenda now. So we're going to move on to the next topic, which we're a little behind schedule, but that's fine because this next one is, I think, really only going to take 5 minutes. And it's a package review. And it's on the package called WFPro request queues. Now the description for it is a control panel for managing request types, queue topics, and queues for ensuring the right work gets to the right place and is assigned to the right people. Now, for those of you who work in an environment where you are leveraging request queues in Workfront, this is definitely a topic that you're going to want to pay attention to. And for those of you who are not using request queues, I think you also should pay attention to it, because there's, I think, always an opportunity for a request queue in Workfront to solve some serious demand management problems. So let's go ahead and take a look at the request queues package. So let me close some of these tabs and open it up. So request queues is a package that, as you guessed, it is just a dashboard in Workfront, as are most of the WFPro packages. But it's a dashboard that contains 3 different reports. And these 3 different reports are reports that I've relied on for years to really help us make sure that, as I said earlier, work is getting to the right people. And what I mean by that is, in Workfront, you have this request link at the top. And when you click on requests, you have the ability to initiate a new request. And for a requester, whether they see 1 or they see 100 items here, for them, when they make these selections, hopefully what they're seeing is intuitive enough for them to make the right choice to get the right, request submitted. But what happens behind the scenes is really important for everyone to understand. And when I say everyone, I mean it's important for not only the requester, but for us as configuration experts or admins or super users or power users. We all need to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Otherwise, it's very nebulous. And when someone submits a request, we can only hope that it's getting to the right place. And so request queues, this dashboard is really meant to sort of open up visibility into what's happening behind the scenes. So the first report you see here is just a simple request types report. And it's just simple. It's showing us the projects that are published in that request interface. Very basic. Name of it and the description. Second report, my favorite, one of the most powerful reports I've ever built in Workfront. It's a queue topic report. And this is the one that tells me, if I run it, I'll just run it and show every queue topic in the system, which is a whole whopping 1. But this is not always the case. Some systems that I happen to be very familiar with have over 300 or 400 queue topics across dozens of request types. And those requests are being routed to over 100 projects, so which we call queues. So we'll talk about those down here in a minute. But in between the request type and the queue, what we have is a queue topic. And the queue topic is typically what says, okay, what custom form do we want to show on the queue topic to the requester? But also, what is the routing rule behind that request? So what happens when that request gets submitted? Because it doesn't typically just fall into the same queue. If it does, then that's fine. But if they're routing somewhere else, we need to know where. And so here we see the routing rule details. We've got the name and we've got the default team if there's a team in the routing rule. So we can hover over that team and see the names of the people behind it. So again, we now know who this request is going to. This is really valuable for those of you who are working with your stakeholders to configure queues. If they have access to these kinds of reports, then they can evaluate the current settings so that they can ask you, intelligently ask you to make changes to those settings, as opposed to them emailing you and saying, hey, I need you to update the routing rule on my queue, which is very kind of hard to figure out unless you really know that person or their queue. So this reporting kind of just exposes what the team is in the routing rule, the user, if there's a defined user, and the queue, which is important because if you're routing, which you should, I think, be routing requests out to a separate project, this tells you where that project is. And you can even link to or click and link to it. And we've also got some system IDs here. So again, this is just a must-have report for admins who are using request queues in the instance. And you can build this out of Workfront reports. It's all HTML and collections, which we covered earlier. So it's a report you can build yourself, but if you don't want to go through all that hassle, you can download the package. And then let's just wrap it up with the final report, which is the queue report. Very simple. It's a report showing us the projects where the issues are landing after they've been submitted and routed. In this case, we're looking at a particular program that holds these projects. So we know all of our queues sit in one program, and we're just filtering and looking at that one program. And we can see how many open issues we have. So if you drop a report like this on top of your, or dashboard rather, on top of your instance, and you have a lot of request types and a lot of queue topics and a lot of queues, this dashboard will immediately expose the entire configuration behind that and give you and your end users the ability to interpret it, understand it. So hugely valuable dashboard, great package, one that I've been using for almost 5 years now, and one that I rely on almost daily. So let me pause there and again, just ask, are there any questions about request queues before I move on to our next package review? Oh, no questions? Okay. We'll move right on then. And this one is also a package that excites me. So the next topic and next package review that I'm going to cover is on a package called WFPro Work. And I'm going to go ahead and close these windows. And Work happens to be one of my main links here in the navigation I showed you earlier. And Work is a collection of all of the WFPro work-related tools and dashboards and utilities that I've found very useful in managing work. And so we're going to talk about what I define work as here in a moment. But Work is, I think, one of the most longest standing and one of the most powerful sets of tools that I've ever used in Workfront. And the reason I say that is because these reports that I'm about to show you have really had a significant impact on my team's abilities to have clear and consistent visibility around work that was assigned to them, regardless of their license type, regardless of any of their settings. If they had work assigned to them or assigned to a team that they were a part of, then these views would expose that work. And so when I click on Work, the very first thing that happens is we land on this dashboard that has what I'm going to call some sub navigation over here, which gets us down into some of the more functional dashboards around Work. And we'll talk about some of those in a moment. But the first thing you see up here is a teamwork request issue report. And below that, a teamwork request task report. Now, the reason these two reports sit here on this dashboard is because I wanted to make sure that if I'm a user in Workfront and I'm ready to go look at work that is assigned to me or that I need to be concerned with, and I load this dashboard, I know that the first thing I'm going to see is the work that has been asked or requested of one of my teams that I'm on, but that has not been assigned to a person. And so that's what we're seeing over here is a teamwork request in the form of an issue. Now, if that happened to be a task, it would have been down here because work requests can be in the form of tasks or in issues. But we don't have any right now, so we're just going to work with issues. Now, organizing issues by the queue or the project they are within is helpful. It helps us understand where the work is in the context of, you know, what project, what is it affiliated with. And so You can see here the issue that was logged on the home project earlier by Doug is in my list here. And the reason it's here is because it's assigned to a team that I'm on, but not assigned to a person. And the way I like to translate that is, if it isn't assigned to a person, then it's essentially nobody's responsibility yet, because nobody's committed to working on it or has even been identified as the person who should be working on it. So therefore, it's, in my opinion, a highest priority item that needs to be present here on this dashboard and needs to be addressed, I think, sooner than anything else, because we always want to make sure that we're triaging work and getting things moving in Workfront. We don't want our backlog to stack up with unresponded to or unassigned work. The longer that happens, the more stressed out we become. So from this dashboard, I can make some pretty quick decisions about this work item. Since we already know what it is, I'm going to go ahead and assign it to myself, and I'm going to say it's in progress. Doing that, making an assignment, is really what takes it off of this dashboard when I refresh. So the request is now gone, okay? And now I've just got this personal request. This is now a personal request that I'll just go ahead and assign to myself. And we'll go ahead and refresh, and now everything's been triaged and it's off this dashboard. But it's in the system and it's assigned to me, and I'm going to show you how we move to the next logical step in working on that request. But before I do, I'd like to take a step back and show you how work begins, right? So work typically begins as a request in my experience, or at least I think it should for the most part. Issues should be raised through these request queues, and when they get logged and they get submitted, we get the native, all requests, or I think requests I've submitted interface. But what you get with work is a requests I've submitted dashboard, which is, again, just another way of presenting the same issues that I've submitted, but in a different way that's consistent and grouped by project. And it still gives me the same functionality, the ability to assign and adjust statuses and things like that. So this is how I can go to find all the work I've submitted in a consistent sort of presentation of information. But now getting back to working on work. So now if I have work that's assigned to me and I know it's time for me to go work on that, then I've got this my active work, active issues plus resolved by. So we'll go ahead and open this. So this one's neat because it's got this cascading sort of layout and presentation of reports. So I'm going to collapse everything so that we're not sort of overwhelmed with information. I find that helpful when explaining dashboards. You might try that too. But the first report here is my new issues. So I think pretty self-explanatory, but the wildcard filter here says show me issues that are assigned to me, or where I'm an assignee rather, that the status is new. And this, again, just gives me the ability to, at a glance, look into those issues and quickly identify, okay, who submitted it and what's the name and is there a description? However, I can get the full description. How old is it? Who's it assigned to? You can make changes here. You can say, well, it's actually in progress. So if it is in progress, it's a good idea to indicate so. And we'll go ahead and change one that we're testing with. Here, we'll change the personal one. So if this personal request is, I'm now working on it, and I want this requester to know that, I change it to in progress, and they, of course, get an email letting them know. But if I refresh, you can see now that request is out of this report. It's no longer visible. That's because it's dropped down into this My Active Issues report. So now that they're mine and they're active and they're assigned to me, I can reduce the amount of information presented. I don't need to show the assigned to here because I know they're mine. So we can now start to show some different pieces of information. And of course, we can leverage tab browsing to open these and get to them if we need to open them and make changes to them and view the details. And of course, use Workfront's native functionality to get into all these sub areas and do what we need to do on the request. Now, the reason this is on the left and is smaller is because on the right, we have active issues that are resolved by a project, task, or issue. And so, as you know in Workfront, or may not know, issues can be resolved by projects if converted to projects. They can be resolved by tasks, and they can even be resolved by other issues. And so if you do work in a scenario where you are converting issues into projects, which I would assume many of you are, then this kind of a presentation showing you the requests on the left that have not been converted to projects and the ones on the right that have has proven very helpful for me in conceptually not only understanding what I have on my plate from just an issue request perspective versus the projects that I need to be drilling into and focusing on and paying closer attention, but it also is the exact same sort of presentation that we would want to encourage all of our users who are managing requests and maybe even turning them into projects to use. And so when we as admins or as power users or configuration experts who are, if we are encouraging the use of Workfront to manage issues and turn them into projects, then if we are using the same dashboards that our end users are using, then everybody is seeing the exact same presentation of information instead of seeing completely different views and completely different pieces of information because they're looking at maybe the team interface, or they're looking at home, or they're looking at some other custom report that someone built. If you get into all of those custom experiences and get away from a consistent experience, it becomes challenging to really kind of keep your end users clear on where they're supposed to look for the things that you're telling them to look for. So let's go ahead and take this personal request and convert it to a project so you can see what happens here. So I'll take this and we'll convert it to a project, and we won't choose a template. We'll just call it a personal request, and I'll keep the original issue and tie its resolution. Go ahead and save. And now we have a project. And if we come back to our dashboard here and refresh it, you'll now see that there's a new record here. And the grouping here is based on the queue that the original issue lives within. So this orange text here in the first row actually represents the original issue and its reference number and its primary contact and entry date, and a link to go open it. But below that is actually the resolving project reference number and name and owner and latest update. And the reason I chose to stack these on top of one another is, again, it really helps the stakeholders wrap their head around that idea that the original issue remains intact, and that when you turn it into a project, if you keep it, keep that checkbox checked to keep the issue and tie its resolution, then they can understand how that original issue remains and how the project is what really resolves the original issue. And that can be really helpful when you're explaining this to people, and giving them this visual is also very helpful. It really helps them kind of understand what happens when the project is closed. And I like to explain it as, hey, when the project gets closed, the original request also gets automatically closed, which automatically sends an email to the requester letting them know that their request has been closed immediately. And there's really no need for anything manual for you to do. Now, you can always go in and communicate and post an update if you like, but the system did the work, which is the way it was designed. So,
Narayan, do both disappear at that point in time off of this report once the resolving project is closed? What happens on this report?
That's correct. So I shouldn't have left that. I'm already open here. So we'll go ahead and complete the project. And of course, when we refresh, it's gone. The original issue is gone. And the work item is out of sight, out of mind, which is really what we're striving for here. And great question, Doug. I'm glad you brought that up. So we're really striving for here is show and present the things that give us just enough information for us to look at it and say, what's the next action? What can I do to act on this? This is in progress. The last update was from me. I can see what I said and when. Can I act on it or not? And again, we don't want to expose everything here. We just want to expose what we need to know. And I've found very basic info, such as who submitted when, what the description is, and what the latest communication is. It's pretty much, I think, all you need to be able to say, all right, I need to dig in further, or no, I can't do anything right now. And dig in further to me means command click, open in a new tab, and then go work on that record. Don't try to solve every problem in the view, in the report. It just won't happen. And all you do is end up cluttering the report with things that are kind of irrelevant to most people and really just valuable to a few. So, so that's how we kind of take a work request through to completion and converting it to a project and kind of keeping track of it. And if you can imagine how this is a My Active Issues view, well, some of the things that you get in addition to that are other views that are similar, but with a twist. So there's a similar view called Active Team Issues plus Resolve By. And you'll notice the layout's pretty much the same, but the difference here is instead of it only looking at me, it's looking at issues assigned to any of the members of the teams that I'm on. So, so this is a way for you to kind of look at you and your teammates in the system and see, okay, what are we all collectively working on, and what do we have on our plates, and who's working on what, and you know, so it's good for just kind of high level visibility as a team to collectively go through once a week or once a day, however frequently you wish, and review this. So let me pause there before I continue on to the next part of that package and wrap it up, and just ask if there are any questions about anything I've shown you so far. Okay, I'm gonna move right on then, no questions. So we don't have time to go through all of these, but I've shown you requests I've submitted, and I've shown you the teamwork requests, which is the triage sort of view, and I've shown you the view that allows you to kind of flip through and work on those requests, keep tabs on them and see them through. But one of the next things I'd like to show you is my on hold work and my completed work, because again, if you think about what I said, you know, kind of out of sight, out of mind, and how we don't want to show things that are irrelevant, what I've decided to do here is take the things that are on hold, and whether they're projects, tasks, or issues, and pull them out of the active reports up here, because if they're on hold, then they're less likely to need us, need our eyes on them as frequently throughout the day or the week. And so this puts them more puts them in a box where we can go open that box when we want to, you know, and explore it, see what do I have on hold, and can I close any of it, or do I need to revisit some of it? So that's just another way of, you know, on hold is just a way of seeing on hold projects, on hold issues, right? All basic Workfront reporting, so nothing fancy there. Completed, very similar, but this one, it has actually proven really valuable. And the reason this one is one that I really like and wanted to mention is because I can't tell you how often somebody, you know, comes to me and says, hey, that request you worked on, or that thing you worked on, that project we worked on, whether it was last week or 6 months ago, I'm likely to have forgotten it, or likely to have forgotten exactly how to get to it because it's closed. I no longer pay attention to it. Well, these reports here just make it that much easier for us to just really quickly go find the things that we've recently closed. Sorting by actual completion date, we can find those things quickly, open them, reopen them if we need to, update them, communicate on them, see where we left off. It really is just a huge time saver. And again, it's just another example of one of those approaches to handling work in Workfront. It's you know, the idea that if we can really just build reports on top of our work and get creative in the way that we pull back that information, then we can see the things that are most important to us on demand throughout the day, and then we can drill down and get to the things that are less and less important to us as we go on. Now, that pretty much completes work, but with the exception of projects. So I haven't really dug into projects, but just a quick sneak peek of projects, and then I'll jump in and show you more of this in one of the later WFPro Live sessions. But projects is part of work, and I think is the biggest part of work, and is a really exciting dashboard that I'll be looking forward to announcing and doing a demo on in an upcoming session. But here it is. It's just, again, a different way of presenting projects instead of the traditional projects I own, projects I'm on, all projects sort of native list view. This is a new WFPro way of presenting projects in reports that make it easy to get to them. So that concludes work. And again, there are more reports in there, and I didn't get to them all, but maybe in another session we can dive in and look at some of the other ones a little closer. So just some final thoughts before we do go. I want to say next week, in the interest of accommodating our viewers that are maybe across the pond or on different time schedules, I'm going to change the schedule. So just for next week, I'm going to do WFPro Live 6 on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. So we'll change it up next week, and hopefully we can get some people to attend who maybe couldn't make it to this standing sort of Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time slot. So that'll look out for that announcement coming on the community here pretty soon. So with that, we've got a few minutes left, and I'll open it up and see if there are any questions from anyone. And also check the chat, because there's a lot in there that I have not got to.
Hey, Karlton, it's Doug. Just wondering, as you do Kickstarts, Bill and I were talking about this a little bit in the sidebar. Do you practice and like delete and reload and delete and reload while you refine a certain layout that you're using? And if so, any quick tips on building up kind of a cheat sheet for various objects?
I actually do have a Kickstart cheat sheet. I'm further developing it because I have done sort of the load, delete. I've done that quite a bit. In particular, I did that when it comes to issues and projects. So yes, I've done that. And then also with building out various custom forms and creating various custom fields, because the issue is that some custom fields, some users want 100 different values in a dropdown, and I'm not gonna, go through do one by one on that. So I've played around a lot with custom field and custom form creation.
Awesome. I sense part 2, maybe part 3 coming soon.
Yeah, I think so.
Bill, just in a moment here as well, for these reports that you're trying to send to Excel that include collections that have been enumerated, I haven't done that in a while, but what are you seeing, or what is it your end users are seeing that is not visually appealing?
They may have 20 values that are part of a single collection, and there aren't in Excel, there aren't any line breaks between the values, whereas in Workfront they do display with line breaks.
Gotcha. So either delimiting with a tilde or a vertical bar and then searching replacing afterwards, or maybe there's a way of injecting something that Excel would understand as a line break. That would be ideal, because there'd be no special handling required. I might chase that one offline too. I'll keep you posted if I find a solution.
Yeah, that would be perfect for some users that really aren't Excel savvy.
Right. We've actually begun preparing Excel files for our stakeholders, and basically what we do is we strip out all the columns for the Kickstart that are irrelevant and focus on the ones that they need to provide us with in order for their data to be loaded successfully. And when we give them the format and we tell them that the data has to match that format perfectly, it's nice because we can coach them and tell them exactly what they have to do, but it's up to them to go make sure that they get their data right. And if they don't, the load will fail. And if they get it right, it'll succeed. And it really kind of takes that responsibility off of our shoulders of cleaning the data, which really should be something that the stakeholder performs. So, but I agree, Doug, that I think there's probably a second and a third presentation coming along the lines of Kickstarts. For example, loading custom fields, drop downs with multi-select, and loading all the choices was something I just didn't know how to do. And Karlton created a template for that. And so now I know how I can go grab that template if I need to kickstart a drop menu with 100 choices without having to go try to figure out how to do that. So maybe, and this is just an idea for you, Karlton, but maybe what we can do is build on this Kickstart presentation and just treat this, or view this as the first in a series of, hey, we did a teaser and we kickstarted a couple of projects with some tasks, but maybe we can demonstrate how we can actually attach custom fields or custom forms and load up more into Workfront and demonstrate some best practices around how to do that, and maybe even show people how we validate the data after it's been loaded into Workfront through use of reports. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Great. All right. Well, hey, everyone, it's top of the hour, a couple minutes past, but thank you so much for joining. And again, look out for the announcement on the community for WFPro Live 6, which will be next Tuesday at a new time, 9 a.m. in the morning, just next Tuesday. So look out for that announcement. And again, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Bye.